we have two scripts in Jupyter Notebook. I'm gonna go ahead and open Jupyter Notebook. We have two scripts, two Python scripts. What we're gonna work on in this lab is basically the script which uses the Python libraries we have on GitHub. But remember, you can always use the other script as a sample to work directly with the OCS API, as we've shown in the previous lesson. So you can use the API console to help you figure out the queries, the URLs to use, basically. But again, for this lesson and throughout the rest of the lab, we're going to concentrate on the script which uses the Python libraries, which OSIsoft provides on GitHub. So in Appendix D, you can find the link for the GitHub library. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. So this is the GitHub library. So the link in Appendix D in the workbook points to this library, and in the README file you can check how to install the library. And so you're going to install it in Python using pip. So it shows how to install it and how to run the program. So basically, after you install the library, you would basically need to configure a file called config.ini, and this is where you specify how to access OCS, what client to use, what client secret to use, and so on. And then after that, you would use the script. Okay, so again, this is just to show you how the GitHub library looks like and how to install it. And again, the link is in Appendix D in the workbook. So now, after opening Jupyter Notebook and after you've installed the library, you can go ahead and open the config.ini file. So that's the first thing you need to modify after installing the libraries. So this basically points to the OCS namespace and to the client ID and client secret. So I'll go through these configurations. So the first thing we specify is the namespace, and that's the namespace we're working with in OCS. So I'm going to go to OCS and make sure you're signed in. And again, we're working with this namespace, enabling enterprise-wide data science. So you make sure that's entered. In the resource, this is where we specify the API endpoint URL. So that's kind of static. The tenant ID, and this is something you get, again, if you explore any of these, if you explore any of the URLs in API console. So if you just pick any of these namespaces and choose get, you can find the tenant ID over here in the URL. Okay, and then we can specify the API version. Usually it's v1. So as you can see here in the API console, most of the API calls use version 1. Again, keep an eye on updates to OCS. We might release newer versions so for the API, so then make sure you specify that in the config file. But we're also including two API versions here. One is v1 preview, because this is what we're going to use in this lab, because we're going to access data from the data views, and the data views are in preview mode, so they require v1 preview. And we included another version of the API for v1 if we want to access other objects in OCS other than the data view. Okay. The other thing which is very important is in the credentials. This is where you specify your client ID and client secret. And this is something we've created in previous lessons. So based on the client you've created in OCS. So again, that's in previous lessons. We have accessed the client in OCS. So under clients, we've created a client. So you probably created your own client, or you're using a client which is already existing. So again, make sure you use the client ID, which was which you used when creating your client, and make sure you use the client secret. Now again, the client secret is something which can only be available and copied when you create the secret, and then it's gone forever. So the idea is just to make it secure is when you create a client, you get a client ID, and then you get a secret which you store somewhere safe, and then that secret is gone. You cannot find it anywhere in OCS. Okay, if you've lost your secret, you can create a new client secret. So you can go to the client and then add a secret, and then make sure you specify a description and then expiry date. It's always good to have an expiry date instead of using never expires as a security best practice. So again, if you want to add a new secret, I'm gonna call the description new secret, and I'm gonna have it expire maybe next year, and then add. So again, after you add the secret, it is mentioned here that you should copy the secret and keep it somewhere safe, because it's gonna you can no longer access it after creating the secret. Okay, so I'm gonna close that, and I'm not gonna create that secret, but that's the idea here is if you've lost the client secret, you can create a new one if you have access, and then you can use that in the code in the configuration file. Okay, so make sure you specify the client ID. Again, the client ID is you can copy it over here from here, and the client secret is the secret you've created. Okay, so this is what we need to configure in the configuration file. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that. Because we're not gonna need it anymore.